It's fair to say that football badges have changed loads over the years. Most pay tribute to the club's heritage, but in more recent years, clubs are adopting a sleeker, modern design which represents them more as a brand than as a football club. Diving straight into it, we've got Man City. Now, City's a difficult one, as you could argue that the previous badge fell under that modernisation tag more so than the current one. City's current badge is a bit of a nod to the badges prior to the 97 Eagle one. But in this video we're going to be looking specifically at the current Premier League badges in comparison to the one they had prior. I've seen people say that the Golden Eagle badge is better than the current badge, but for me, as a nod to those badges prior, I've got to go with the current one. By the way, we did recently do a tour of the Etihad Stadium and we'll be back there for the Champions League game on Tuesday, so check out that previous video after this video and subscribe to make sure you don't miss out on a Man United fan visiting Man City in the Champions League. Yeah, and believe it or not, as a United fan, looking at the current Man United badge in comparison to the previous one, you'll see that they're pretty much the same, apart from the current one is just a simplified version of the previous one. So in '98, the club controversially dropped the football club from the badge because they thought it would make it more marketable. Now this isn't just exclusive to football. Those of you who watch WWE will know that they often distance themselves from the word wrestling. Instead of calling their wrestlers wrestlers, they call them superstars for the same reasons. I guess it's just a little bit more mainstream. As a football fan though, I've got to go with the old school badge. It's the one I grew up with, and essentially it's a football club. Fresh off the back of that 10-point deduction, we're going to get on to Everton. Now Everton, again, controversially, dropped their Latin slogan underneath the badge in 2013. There was fan outrage and that badge only lasted a season, so for that reason we're going to compare the current badge with the Latin phrase reintroduced with the one they had prior. Both beautiful badges, I've got to say. Both have that Latin slogan, but I think the current one is a little bit cleaner than the one prior. There's enough going on with the modernisation of the new one. It's not like it's been completely simplified like some of the ones we're going to get onto in a moment. It's clean, it's classy, but this badge is sassy. The cock. Look at the confidence of that bird. It is a bit too simple for me in comparison to obviously the previous Spurs badge, so for that reason I am going to go with the old Spurs badge. But with that said, if Spurs had kept their shield design I think they had in like 2017, 2018, because they were playing at Wembley and it was to protect the cock. Protect the cock. If they had that badge currently with the shield, I love a shield, I would have gone with that badge. But no, they didn't. They ditched it. So the cock isn't protected anymore. And because of that unprotection of the cock, I'm going to go with the old badge. So Newcastle have kind of done the opposite from most clubs. The old badge is the simplified badge, whereas the new one, the current one, the one they've had actually since 1988, is the slightly more fancy one. Clear winner, guys, isn't it really? Let me know if you disagree in the comments below. Clear winner for me, the current badge is the winner out of the two, of course, obviously. By the way, you are welcome to play along in the comments section below. Obviously, my opinion isn't the right opinion. Everyone's got an opinion. But I think with regards to that Newcastle badge, the current one definitely is better than that previous 80s simplified version. West Ham. So it's clear that they wanted to get the London into their new badge. I guess to mark the fact that they moved to what was the Olympic Stadium, and the fact that having London on your badge might make the club maybe more marketable. But for me, that previous badge was beautiful. It's simple, it is simple. There's nothing too over the top about it. You know, when clubs simplify badges for branding reasons, there's no reason why they couldn't have kept that old badge. For me, it's an iconic badge, it's a lovely badge. I think of players, again, from the 90s, Paulo Di Canio and stuff. Well, that's more early 2000s, wasn't it? A lovely badge. Clear winner, the old badge. Ooh, Fulham. So I remember the old local borough council badge that they had before, the emblem, as I don't know if I mentioned over there. Or is it? Behind me somewhere. When I watched Hereford United back in the 90s, Fulham were playing in Hereford's league, in what was League 2 now, the old, I think it was Division 3 back then, and Fulham had that borough emblem thing. So normally, I look at that simplified badge they've got now that they introduced in the early 2000s, and I think way too simple, way too bland. But when I think of that badge, it reminds me of, it doesn't remind me personally because I wasn't born, but if you've watched old footage of Georgie Best and Rodney Marsh playing in that Fulham shirt with the FFC on the badge, it's kind of quite iconic, and it's definitely, albeit simple, it's definitely a throwback to those days. So I've got to go with a modern badge. I'm going to go with that simple FFC badge. Onto their blue rivals now. We've got Chelsea. Now Chelsea had some absolutely beautiful shirts with that old badge. The old badge though is a little bit bland with a CFC. I know I'm slightly hypocritical as I've just mentioned the Fulham badge. For me, the new one, I think they introduced in like 2005 possibly. Or did they have like a centenary, twist to the badge? I think they did. Let me know in the comments below. The current one they've got is a really nice badge, and not only is it just a modernised badge, it is a nod to their 50s badge, the one they had in the 50s or introduced in the 50s. So not only is it modernised, it's actually a nod. They're my favourite ones. We mentioned the Man City one. When people modernise a badge, clean it up, make it quite simple, but it's also a nod back to their history. That's a win-win situation for me. Liverpool. Oof, we also did a Liverpool Anfield tour as well, so check that video out after this video. Now, referring back to that tour, it kind of reminded me that although Liverpool have that simplified badge on their shirts, they're still very much using the more complex badge that they did have on their shirts in like the 90s and 2000s, etc. So for me, if we just count the actual more complex badge as it is still being used, comparing that to the one in the 80s, which arguably they had more success with, or loads of success with, I'm still going to go with the one they currently have, the more complex version, because that greeny type colour for me is a nod to some of those iconic Liverpool away kits. I'm going with that badge. Now, Arsenal's old badge gives me nightmares. Now, as a 90s kid, this badge that they used in the 90s and early 2000s, when Arsenal were really good, I don't know if you've guessed, guys, but despite my Lancashire accent, I'm a Man United fan that's not from Manchester. I'm sure you've reminded me of that a few times. As a kid, I saw Arsenal as my biggest rivals. They were always up there fighting for the title against United with that bloody badge. But with that said, that badge, it is a beautiful badge, isn't it? Let's be honest. I was never a fan of the updated shield badge with the half and half, different shades of red. So for me, it's a clear winner. Again, I could be wrong. Let me know in the comments below. But for me, that badge, despite Arsenal giving me some nightmares, is a beautiful bloody badge. Aston Villa's a weird one because currently on their shirt they're using this, but in terms of their actual branding on their social media accounts, if you go to Villa Park around the ground, they're still using this. So what we're going to do, we're going to compare this with the one prior. But before we do, even as a United fan, I've got to admit, you guys see me go to Villa Park quite often. My mum's a big Villa fan, so in order to get tickets, I have actually got a Villa membership. I'm not doing myself any favours on YouTube, am I? I've got a Villa membership, and as part of that membership I get lots of emails, and Aston Villa like to email me every bloody week with an update for their new badge. They're getting a new badge. Obviously the one they use on their shirt at the moment didn't go down too well. So for the moment though, we're going to concentrate on this badge and the one prior. And if you can see over there, that was my very first football shirt. There was a slight chance I almost became a Villa fan. And if you look at the old badge on that shirt, it's stripy. For me, stripes are a winner. That is one of the nicest shirts of all time. Little pinstripe, but the badge is striped. You don't see many stripy badges. I love a shield, and I love a motto as well, prepared. Prepared. I'm not prepared with this video. I'm very much winging it on this video. But I love that badge. It's a nice badge. Brentford. Now, if you've seen my most recent video before this, it's a video called Football Nightmares. It's basically a video regarding those awesome blooper videos we had when we were a kid. We loved those videos, didn't we? And one of those DVDs, should I say, was Bradley Walsh's, bit of a tongue twister, Soccer Shockers, whereby he hosted the video at Brentford's ground, being a Brentford fan and all that, but it did remind me of the somewhat messy badge Brentford had previously. Now, I'm not a fan of all these clubs reverting to a simple circular design. I think it's been overdone. But in Brentford's case, I do think the old badge was a little bit messy, and I do prefer the current badge. So similar to Fulham, Brighton was a team I saw play Hereford United at Edgar Street back in the 90s as a 90s kid. You know, they've hopped up the leagues, and look what's happened to Hereford. They went into liquidation in like 2014. Brentford, Fulham and Brighton have gone on to better things. They're in the Premier League. Now, looking at Brighton's badge, I've got to look, neutrally, despite those horrible memories from the 90s when Brighton relegated Hereford, essentially, with that 1-1 draw at Edgar Street. That badge led to the next season. They updated the badge in 97, 98, sometime around then, and they had a shield, which is a similar version to the version they've got now. But again, going back to those circular designs, for me, there's no real need for Brighton to have a circular badge. They've just got the seagull within the badge. It just looked better for me in the shield, and for that reason right there, they did tweak their badge. There is a few incarnations they had for like a season or two in between these two badges, but comparing those two on the screen right now, I've got to go with the shield one as the winner. Luton's badge has pretty much been the same, bar a few different incarnations since 1987, but comparing these two on the screen right now, I'm going to go with the current badge. Going by the fact that the current Burnley badge is basically a different coloured version compared to the previous one, let's compare the Burnley badge they had years ago from 1987 to 2009. Let's compare that badge with the current one slash previous one. It's basically the same thing. For me, I'm going to go with the current Burnley badge. Reason being, it's modernised, it's clean, it's sleek, but there's still enough going on for me to make it look like a football badge, not just a brand logo. Wolves. Now, if you saw the Molineux tour, you'd have witnessed my complete lack of knowledge with regards to the history of the Wolves badge. They ditched the wolf and had the crest from 93 to 96, but thankfully in 96 they reverted back to the wolf. And they had, arguably, one of the nicest football kit designs to go with that badge. The kit almost looked like the badge. A beautiful kit. Comparing that incarnation in 96 with the FC and the Wolverhampton Wanderers to the current one, I'm going to break the mould actually. And normally, I'm fully against really simplified logos, but in Wolves' case, it just works. For me, it's like comparing the Wolves badge to the McDonald's Golden Arches, the M. It's iconic. You only have to look at that Wolves badge and know it means Wolverhampton Wanderers. That isn't the case for every football badge, but for me, that simplified Wolves design, it just works. Iconic, definitely. Lovely bloody badge. Sheffield United. Now, Sheffield United have pretty much always had the same badge, especially over the last 40 years. In 2015, they did revert back to their original badge, a nice little nod to their incarnation, to their history, but by default, because they pretty much, especially in the modern era, always had this badge, it's such an iconic badge for Sheffield United, by default I've got to go with the current new badge. The Cherries. Ladies and gents, firstly, just take a look at this. We all know what this looks like. And on top of that, they've basically always had the badge, which looks like a shampoo logo. For me, Bournemouth have probably had some of the worst badges over the years. Not your typical football badges. But if we're going to compare these two on the screen right now, I'm definitely going to go with the current one. For me, it's a little bit classier. There's a little bit of gold on there. By default, again, I've got to go with the current logo. Logo badge. Never call a football badge a logo, right? Badge. Crystal Palace is quite a tricky one because there's not that much difference in their current badge to the previous one, but researching the badges, the current one slightly edges it for me, because if you look at some of the previous incarnations in the 70s and 80s, and if you look at the way the eagle is kind of positioned, the way it's facing, the current one definitely has a nod to those 70s and 80s badges. It's close, but I'm going to once again go with the current Crystal Palace badge. Last but not least, Nottingham Forest. Well, they've had this iconic badge since 1974. In 2010, they did update it and put the 2 stars on there, obviously as a nod to the fact that they're a 2-time European champion. Flaunt it is what I say, get those stars on there. But if we do compare the current badge, the one they pretty much had since 1974, with this one, it's a clear winner, isn't it, guys? The current badge, I say the modern new badge, but it's the one they've had years, the iconic badge, the current one is the bloody winner. So the overall winner, with 14 votes over the 20 options I had, I went with the current new, the current new badge, which would suggest that changing the club badge to the current one most of the Premier League clubs has mostly worked out. So 6 old badges I went with. There was no kind of chalk and cheese between them. It was quite tough with regards to choosing each, but generally speaking, clubs have got it right with the current badge they've got. Let me know, guys, what you picked in the comments below. It's been fun making this video. I look forward to getting out and about, as I mentioned. Oh, I've got this Man City pin set over here from the trip to the Etihad last week. Look at the absolute state of this. I should not be showing you these pictures. It's like having pictures of kissing another lady as a Man United fan. That's just wrong. But we will be there again next week, and if you want to see other stadium tours, matchday vlogs and stuff, subscribe to the channel, make sure notifications are on. We're going to be uploading a little bit more often this week because I'm off the milk round and the missus is on holiday, so I've got loads of time on my hands. Hope you've enjoyed the video, and I'll see you soon.